Hey. Oh.
Ooh, my chair's not. My chair feels like it's not right. I know.
Good evening and welcome to the regular school board meeting of Independent School District 833. It is Thursday, January 17th, 2019. It's 6:30 p.m. and we are in the District Service Center in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. 1.0 is roll call.
Pat Driscoll.
Present.
Heather Hirsch.
Present.
Michelle Whitty.
Here.
Katie Schwartz.
Here.
Sharon Van Leer.
Present.
Ram Kath.
Here.
Tracy Burnett.
Here.
Lindsay Strom. Here.
2.0, please rise and join me in Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
3.0 is the approval of our agenda, and we do have one additional action item, 10.2, which is the approval of wages and benefits for our maintenance employees. So with that addition, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Sharon, second by Heather. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 4.0 are our district highlights, and tonight, Kristine Schaefer, our assistant superintendent, will introduce Newport Elementary.
Good evening, Chair Brunette, school board members, Assistant Superintendent Nielsen, and student representatives. There's a lot of S's in that, Julie. Tonight I am proud to introduce Principal Rich Romano and the staff from Newport Elementary. Newport Elementary is one of 5 schools in the state of Minnesota to be designated as beating the odds by the Minnesota Department of Education. I'm going to let Rich talk more about that and let him introduce his staff to you.
Thank you, school board members. It's an honor to be here today. But most importantly, it is an honor to be with this wonderful staff, which I'd like them to stand up at this time and give themselves a round of applause, perhaps. They are the reason why Newport Elementary School is the wonderful place that it is. And we've had extraordinary success over the last 2 years, especially. It's our second year of being recognized on the Beat the Odds list. The Beat the Odds designation for the Minneapolis Star and Tribune newspaper is schools that exceed their expectations based on the poverty level of students at their site. So this is our second year. This year was both math and reading, and it is simply because of this wonderful staff, hardworking every day, wonderful parents, students, and just a wonderful school that Newport is and continues to be. So I just want to thank all of the staff for their hard work. Thank you as a board, and Dr. Jacobus, who has allowed us to do a few things slightly different at Newport Elementary School to meet the needs of our student, which has worked out wonderfully. So thank you so much tonight. We are very much honored.
Thank you.
Ms. Bertrand's not coming up, I think.
Did she have her 10-minute prepared speech?
I don't have a 10-minute prepared.
No, her.
Did
she have a 10-minute prepared speech she wanted to share?
Yes, Ms. Bertrand has it's a 1-minute prepared speech. Maybe any questions that you have for myself or any of the staff at Newport?
I just wanted to say woohoo, and it's been great getting to know some of you as we've gone around to meet some of the teachers and staff and really hear about how you serve the whole needs of the student at Newport. We certainly acknowledge that your work extends beyond the school needs and school day, and that's something we really understand and hear and appreciate you all for your dedication.
Mm-hmm. I had the opportunity to go visit with a classroom when the commissioner was there a few weeks ago, and it was great, and the staff were extremely welcoming, and the students were so kind. So it was great to be there, and I had a great experience. So if that is anything like most days, then I can see why you're doing so well.
Thank you and congratulations.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you, school board. We appreciate it. Thank you.
5.0, public comment. At this time, individuals may speak to the school board on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. The board will not respond to or discuss your comments. Character abuse or specific complaints identifying staff, students, or task force members will not be permitted. The superintendent may be asked to prepare a response to your concerns. Our policy allows 3 minutes per person, and we do have Kathleen Gora, who had signed up this evening. Yep, just come up.
First, I just want to say thank you for letting me talk, and this is way outside my comfort zone. I would just like the school board to consider when you have parents fill out what race their child is, broadening that definition. This is my daughter, and if you look at the races that you have listed for her, and you look at the U.S. Census Bureau's definitions for them, she doesn't meet any of them. And when parents of children and children who look like her start out in your school district and you don't even have a definition that includes them, that starts out the experience of having them feel excluded. And what I did for her was, if she doesn't meet the definition, I don't fill out the box. And I learned from some of my other friends of color that what happens is what happened to my daughter. White becomes the automatic thing. And so she was eventually labeled as white. And that really bothered her because she said, "I'm not white. Look at me, Mom. I'm not white." And I can tell you that she has not had a white child's experience. And so that's another reason. But she doesn't identify as white. She never has. So then the closest definition she is, according to the Census Bureau, is American Indian. So I changed it. I called the school board, or the school, and I said, "Can you just change it to American Indian?" And now I get a lot of information about Native American stuff, and I appreciate that. But again, I'm like, that's not who she is. That's not she doesn't fit. And so the U.S. Census Bureau allows another category. They allow people to identify. They allow people to choose different races, multiple races. And I think that when the school board is looking at equity and looking at wanting people to feel included, you need to look at, when people are starting out, if you don't have a box that fits their child, and a child is there and she doesn't have a box that fits her, how that makes that child feel. And my daughter is asked all the time, "What are you?" And people are never satisfied with her answer. And I think that I would just like the school board to change that. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is the only person I have signed up this evening. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the board? All right. Then we will move on to 6.0, which is our consent agenda. All consent items are considered routine and non-controversial by the board and will be approved by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items, but prior to the meeting, board members could have removed an item to be considered as an action item. We don't have that this evening, so I will entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
So moved by Pat, second by Sharon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Board Chair Brunette, if I could interrupt real quick, just as a reminder to the community, when we do our consent agenda items, we always have an item for the resolution of accepting gifts. And so tonight we had the opportunity to accept these gifts this last month of $36,185, which gives us a school year total now of over $414,387. So again, we want to thank our generous community for those gifts. We also want to thank those folks that dedicate so many hours to our school district too that we don't count. But at the end of our school board meeting, we do share the names of those folks that did share their generous gifts with us. If you do see their name or see them out in the community, then please acknowledge and thank them for us at the school board.
Thanks. 7.0, our workshop items, we will have those on the agenda February 7th. 8.0, information items. 8.1 is a strategic plan update from our Assistant Superintendent, Julie Nielsen.
Thank you, Chair Brunette. I'll just say that it's a little different angle being up here than being in the back row this evening. Hello. Tonight I would like to introduce the team of leaders who are working with teams throughout the district supporting our strategic plan, Together We Are So Wash Co. Last year the decision was made to have a clearer focus and fewer objectives in place. Tonight you will hear a progress check for the 2018-2019 school year on how we are doing with our district goals of personalization and climate and culture. The presentation will begin with our work around personalization. In this area, you will hear about the 3 priority statements that we are focused on. As our leaders come forward, I would ask that each of them introduce themselves prior to their sharing.
Apologize for rushing in. Good evening. The personalization objective was created 3 years ago. First of all, I'm Brian Booth, Director of Professional Development and Accountability. Hi, everybody.
Brian, hold on 1 second.
Yes.
You're good.
Ah. Might need that. Okay.
Just start fresh, Brian.
Okay, no, it's okay. All right, the personalization objective was created 3 years ago, and we are proud of the work that's taken place over the past 3 years. The creation of the objective itself was an important step and informs our work today. The objective focuses on 3 key verbs that lead to a specific outcome. We will engage, motivate, and empower each student through personalized instruction to create shared ownership of learning. Each priority statement and action step is working to do those 3 things, either engage students, motivate, and empower them. Why are we doing this? So that we can create a shared experience between the community, the teacher, the student, and the family. My hope is that as you hear about these 3 priority statements and the action steps with it, you'll see student engagement, motivation, and empowerment throughout the presentation. We'll begin with priority statement 1, so I'll turn it over to Ashley Ruka, Assistant Principal at East Ridge High School, and Leah Boulos, our Secondary Literacy Specialist.
Good evening. I'm Leah Boulos, Secondary Literacy Specialist.
And I'm Ashley Ruka. I'm an Assistant Principal at East Ridge High School.
And we partner with Dr. Jacobus on this personalization statement. So for the last 3 years, we have gathered students from all of the middle schools and high schools together to empower their student voice and to impact our work that we do around standards-based instruction and other things in the district. The first year we spent with the students, we taught them about the process of human-centered design thinking so that they could think outside the box a little bit and so that they would have a means of gathering their own voices and the voices of their peers around them. So we did a lot of listening with empathy and teaching them how to talk to their peers and gather their input. After this, based on the work that first year, we came up with 2 how might we questions to work on. The first one was how might we personalize learning in 833 so that each student feels connected to, supported, and motivated by adults and each other. So they really wanted to know how can we have more of a connected environment for our students, to each other, and to adults. The second how might we personalize learning in 833 so that we teach students responsibility and organization via a relevant and flexible curriculum. They had a lot of passion around the area that students need to be taught responsibility and organization, that this just was not innate for all of our students, and that we needed to have a curriculum that was relevant and flexible that they could see themselves in. And so based on that work that first year, we had some projects that we started last year that are continuing into this year, and Ashley will talk about those.
Through the work and their exploration with these these how might we questions, the students developed a color inventory, really a conglomerate of a variety of color inventories that exist already out there in the world, with their hopes that it serves as a tool for teachers to get to know them better and for them to get to know their teachers better. Last year's work with our advisory was really centered on getting a pilot up and running. The students were well aware that Woodbury Middle School uses this resource heavily and frequently in their building to get to know their students, but they wanted to see how that might work at different levels. And they planned to pilot it at a couple of elementary schools and at the high school. Unfortunately, we faced some challenges and some missed meetings due to weather last year and a variety of different things that got in our way. So the pilot's running now, which is the good news, and we're hoping to get feedback collected by the end of this trimester so that they kind of dig in on what they learned from that experience and then what their recommendations are moving forward. In parallel to that work, our students have also served as a sounding board for other pieces of our strategic plan. So the Climate and Culture group, Student Climate and Culture group, has used them to get feedback and ideas for their work, which you'll hear about in a little bit. And we've also brought forward to them the drafted homework policy that some of our adult groups have been working on so that they could analyze it and pick it apart and ask some questions and provide some feedback to that group as well. Most recently, we have taken a look at what some schools are doing outside of our district and outside of our state. And the students in particular have been inspired by WashU schools in Nevada, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. They do an annual Strength and Voice Summit, and really the purpose of that summit is to bring student voice into the issues and discussions that their schools and systems are facing, and also provide them an opportunity to problem solve with district professionals and the members of their strategic planning community as part of their process. When the students got access to that, we watched a few videos and gathered some information about what they were doing. It was very energizing. And so our work moving forward this spring is to try to plan and develop a very micro version of a student-led conference inspired by WashU schools, maybe an evening event so that the students on our advisory can lead some of the discussions about important topics that our district and our schools are facing. So we're looking forward to that. As we conclude this year, we are also excited to involve them in reviewing and drafting the new strategic plan as it's developed as part of our process moving forward. So they've been busy. Yep, very busy. Any questions?
I have questions.
Of course.
Actually, a question and a comment. So I will say I am familiar with Washoe County, actually, because they are part of a National Social Emotional Learning committee that I sit on, and so I think it's amazing to bring more students in, and I think there's another model that I want to share with you that Cincinnati Schools uses, where they bring together students at the secondary level, and they choose a problem as a student group, and then they have sessions all day long about how can they help address that problem, and then the district commits to at least implementing one of the things that the students bring forward. Right. So I always think that it's great to get more opportunities for student voice, and there's also the Minnesota Alliance with Youth, which was Governor Dayton's youth committee that he formed, and that I believe Governor Walz is still moving forward with, is also having a youth conference in March. It's a youth educational leadership summit in Minneapolis or St. Paul, I don't remember. But that might be a good opportunity for some of our youth to attend, just to see different ways that youth in Minnesota are bringing their voice forward and doing different things locally as well. So thank you. I think it's really exciting, and I can't wait. And I would like to ask that they come and share to the board after they have the event.
It would be all about that. Yep, they would be excited to share. So, yep, we'll do that. Thank you.
All right. Priority Statement 2 is really a merger of multiple priority statements from last year. As the strategic plan was drafted a few years ago, much of the work in this statement, they were separate items. We were working on standards-based instruction, but really at the early elementary level. We were working on technology needs, but we were trying to identify pilot sites and see what that experience might look like. Well, today, as a part of the plan, we're at a pivotal moment where that work starts to converge. Priority Statement 2 now reflects how we're moving forward to implement standards-based instruction and merging that with technology to create shared ownership of learning. So for more about this statement, Kelly Jansen, our Director of Teaching and Learning Services, and I will share information about each action step, and so Kelly gets the first one.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. Each of these points describe the action steps associated with Priority Statement 2 that Brian just described. The first action step includes ensuring a system of support in which the district office is directly connected with schools. In addition to some of the restructuring of the TLS department that you've heard of and you'll continue to hear about, this includes working with the ATPPS committee and using some of the funding from current positions along with the increased levy that you approved last year as our first step in building that strong support system for SBI, program implementation, and instructional coaching in our schools.
The second action step is important because it supports our work in the elementary with standards-based report cards. We need to ensure we continue to provide support for our teachers as we phase in additional subjects on the elementary progress report. Some of the support structures included communications via email and video throughout the fall from REA and TLS, attending school meetings, and presenting on SBI. and individual meetings with teachers to talk through the process of SBI. The Long Range Planning Committee, Priority Statement 2, is working on a timeline for the phase-in of subjects through K-5 and having conversations about secondary reporting using what we know about standards-based instruction and infusing the needs for GPA. For the third statement, we began by taking inventory of what we currently have throughout the system for assessments and resources. For resources, we continued the elementary math curriculum conversation that began last year, which you'll hear about later from Kelly. We've worked on a curriculum review cycle that incorporates a timeline that includes information regarding program review and curriculum adoption. We plan to present to you in the near future regarding a curriculum cycle plan as well. And then for assessments, we'll be reconvening our district assessment committee to determine if our current assessment calendar is meeting our needs, or is it time to revisit when and how we're delivering assessments for our students.
The fourth statement includes continuing to support teachers in grades 6 through 12 through the unpacking process. We have had consistent meetings throughout the year with stakeholders from departments to provide time and a framework for these conversations. At this point, all 612 content areas are on track to enter next year with unpacked standards and identified success criteria. There is a group also working with what does this look like next year for 6th grade as those 5th grade students who are used to standards-based reporting move into the middle school, and we're working through that this spring. The final statement involves how we communicate with parents. In our elementary, we are working with teachers to use Seesaw as a digital learning portfolio for students. Seesaw provides students with creative tools to capture and reflect on their learning in real time. Students' work then can be shared with parents through the family app, giving families a window into each of our classrooms and into students' learning process. If you have a student in the Seesaw app, it's pretty cool to get that alert throughout the day. Schoology is an integrated learning management system that is intended to serve as a digital classroom for grades 6 through 12. Students use Schoology to access class resources, content, and to complete or submit assignments. It also allows teachers to facilitate more robust and complex learning activities as well as provide private, formative feedback. This really is the first step in creating an online course presence for District 833. We are also continuing our conversations on how we can ensure access to technology for students and staff so that we can utilize these great learning and communication tools, and you will hear more about that as we move forward. The last statement, well, before we move on, I think, should we ask for questions at this point? Regarding priority statement 2. Question?
Well, maybe just a quick comment. Sure. I know the Seesaw and the Schoology works really well because at the office that I work in, I actually have 2 colleagues that have children in our school system. And both of them, I always ask them, like, how is that at work and you're getting that? And they were, the one showed me, and I'm like, that is pretty cool. So I applaud that we're, having that touch point with our parents, in real time.
The last statement from personalization involves extended learning and out of school time. And for that, I will turn it over to Bob Lawrence, Community Ed Director.
Good evening. Thanks for taking the time to hear from us tonight. As Kelly just shared, my name is Bob Lawrence. I'm the Director of Community Ed, and what you've heard so far is a number of ways that we're engaging and motivating students throughout the K-12 system. What I'll talk about here in Priority Statement 3 is what we're doing outside of that. Our mission in District 833 is to ignite a passion for lifelong learning. We all know that learning happens outside of the school day as well, and so that's what this Priority Statement 3 is going to look like, specifically looking at the out-of-school time, which includes before and after school, and summer engagement work in learning, and then also I'll talk about some of the work that we're doing in our early learning programs to help with the personalization goal. So one of the long-term goals, if you look at the strategic plan under personalization, the 6-year goals, is that learning will connect the interests, talents, passions, and aspirations of each learner so that learning is fun, engaging, and ongoing. So when we think about how do you connect the interests, talents, and passions, our schools and our teachers and our staff do a great job of doing that during the school day. But sometimes, oh, did I not go on? There we go. Should I start over? Cut the film. So when we think about how do we engage those students in those passions and developing some of that beyond the school day is an opportunity throughout our school time programs that we can do that by having more focused enrichment opportunities, academic programs, and so forth. So out of school time is that opportunity, and a lot of people, when they think of out of school time, they think of Kids Club, which is our school age care program. That is our largest program. We serve about 2,000 students every day before and after school in grades K-5. But we also have other out of school time programs. That's enrichment programming, academic programs, and recreation programs. Last year we served we had about over 26,000 registrations that comprised of 12,000 individual students who registered for some sort of out-of-school time program. So we have the opportunity to impact students beyond the school day, and so that's what we're doing. So in Kids Club, because that is our largest program, we've been working to implement strategies to really get to know students and understand their interests, who they are, what motivates them, and then from that, provide opportunities and programs to help them explore those interests as well. Another strategy that we've implemented actually has to do with the structuring of our staffing model. We've recently hired some out-of-school time specialists, and one of their jobs is to work with schools and the out-of-school time programming in those schools to implement best practices, align activities with each site and their school improvement plan, and then also personalize strategies and provide other supports. Measurement of this goal will be done. We do annual surveys with both students and parents to find out how we're doing in relation to what the environment's like for their student, how well we're meeting individual student needs. Even something simple as we ask the question, does staff know your child's name? And that's an indicator that as we work to personalize that experience, parents should know that we know their child's name when they're in our programs. So just like learning's happening beyond the school day, we know that it happens throughout life, and our earliest learners, and before they join us from kindergarten, they're learning along the way, some at home, some with formal programs, some in our programs. And so we do have a comprehensive early learning program that you've heard about throughout the year. We've had our team was here this past spring talking about the alignment between our early childhood special ed, our early childhood family education, and our preschool efforts. With the alignment and sharing this with you is important because what the alignment has done is allowed us to develop a strong research-based focus on social emotional learning, which meets the needs of each child as they prepare to enter and be successful in kindergarten. The alignment has resulted in a more cohesive curriculum among all of our early learning programs. We have shared professional development, aligned evaluation tools, and a program-wide department improvement plan for early learning. In addition to the internal alignment, we have been working to expand our outreach both to parents and families and also to providers of early learning programs throughout the community. For preschool, we serve about 1/3 of our incoming kindergartners in our preschool program, which means there's about 1,000 kids who come to kindergarten the first day who were somewhere else for the previous 5 years. And so what we're working to do is align and share the best practices through some professional development opportunities that our district staff are offering out to providers in the community. We have a PD coming up for providers, and we have about 100 registrations, and that's both in-home providers and center-based providers of preschool. We do child care home visits, so in-home child care. We have educators who will go out and meet with them and spend time with the providers to see how they're engaging the students and give them, again, best practices and information on how they can help prepare them for kindergarten. And then we also share out the pyramid framework, which is a framework that we use that helps develop social emotional learning. So when we measure this goal, we have specific measures of K readiness that have been outlined in the department improvement plan, and so that's what I'll share in the spring when we meet with the big group is how we're doing there. And then one other thing, we've also added a question to our kindergarten enrollment form. We not only ask now, did your child have a preschool experience, but we ask where it was. And the reason we started doing that is because we know that we don't serve all of the 1,500 incoming kindergartners. We'd like to know where they are being served and what that looks like so we can continue to reach out and help provide support to both families, providers, and ultimately get those kids ready to be successful in kindergarten. So before I turn it over to Acting Superintendent Nielsen, I will see if there's any questions or comments. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you're connecting with the kindergarten or first grade teachers with what you're doing around the social emotional learning work? Because I think obviously it spills over.
Absolutely. Yep. And so I haven't that wasn't in here, but in addition to our horizontal alignment, we've been working on a birth through grade 3 alignment for that exact reason, because we know that the learning that continuing up to 3rd grade. So that's been part of that team and some of the professional development that we've done. Yep.
Thank you.
And With that, thank you to the leaders who shared the work around personalization. We will move into climate and culture next. And unlike personalization, where we have 3 strategic objectives, we actually have 6 underneath the area of climate and culture. And we have 3 that strictly relate to students and 3 that relate to staff. And so Mike Jansen and Dr. Kevin Witherspoon will cover this area.
Good evening. Our first priority statement this year for student climate and culture is to apply student preference for learning by creating opportunities at the secondary level that involves shared ownership. And the first action plan in this priority is to complete the middle school program of study. First off, we've got 2 new employees here at our district office. Jennifer Elsesser is our college and career readiness coordinator, and Angela Lawrence is our secondary curriculum coordinator, and those 2 have been working together, and they've dedicated time and resources to this project with plenty of success. They've visited every middle school and met with countless teachers and departments to assist them in their process. Their first presentation to the middle school principals was 2 months ago, and the second one that they had was just a couple weeks back, where they shared their first major draft. It's about 13, 14 pages. The principals were very supportive of this. Excellent work. They added and aligned many course descriptions. That was the majority of the document, while modeling it after the high school program of study, just to bring a sense of familiarity in the future for the kids. Specific programming at the middle schools included like AVID, special education, and gifted ed, but also explaining things like Schoology that was just mentioned beforehand. There's a future course planning segment for the kids. We were also figuring out what parents want and need and what would be helpful for the students overall. It's a work in progress, but solid work thus far and well on its way to successful completion. The second action plan really revolves around creating student focus groups and asking them questions about their choice and voice. This was changed just slightly, but instead of creating new student focus groups at each one of our 8 secondary schools, Leah Boulos and Ashley Ruka had invited me to survey the students at the Personalization Student Forum in November, and this has been done at Youth Advisory Council as well. But next, I asked our small group members a short time ago to select students from their schools to ask the same types of questions and to hear from kids who need more assistance, who don't do school well at times, struggle with school, or sometimes they choose alternative options, so we want to know why. At the high school level, using credit recovery was an excellent idea from our high school administrators present in those group meetings. Or I could visit a regularly required class for a good snapshot to ask those students the same questions. It was also suggested that I would speak to some of our 916 students as well as the online students that we have. And at the middle school level, my group members suggested surveying the strategies classes or AVID classes, as we really need to get feedback from the underserved populations to get a true representation. What the last action plan means, our third one, is that everything we learn from this process above we'll share with the Curriculum Advisory Committee in March. Kelly Jansen invited me to that. We've talked about that. But also sharing with principals, Kelly, the members of the Program Study Committee who meet in May, that forum will be where the progress or that positive progress will be made. The second priority statement is to demonstrate the use of CLRT strategies across our district. First, we're continuing our district focus with Dr. Shiraki Holly's text, as well as all the strategies from his binder and other resources. First off, our CLRT district coaches, Jennifer Terry and Gina Spoo, are so instrumental in assisting us in this work. Our progress to date is that staff meetings really turn into staff development on this. Our equity teacher leaders and members of the equity committees often lead activities from Dr. Holly's materials. For example, at Cottage Grove Mid, Jennifer Terry presents to staff one time a month to help with strategies. Teachers also do this in class, adding to the toolbox rather than a sit and get model. There's also ongoing professional development during team planning time at the middle schools with a separate activity per month. The second action step is the district focus of specific schools and teachers receiving that one-on-one coaching, and Jennifer and Gina are leading that charge. First of all, at both Woodbury Mid and Cottage Grove Mid, they've been doing that since the start of the year. Our remaining schools, however, except for Next Step, they're actually getting trained too in February. All elementary schools, as part of this one-to-one coaching for year 2, will start up in February. That's Cottage Grove, Armstrong, Gray Cloud, and Hillside. This morning I was over at Hillside for a meeting led by Bridget Riley with her team. to prepare for the upcoming coaching next month after conferences are done. The whole team was present. Principal Shattuck was there. It was really a good meeting. But finally, Jennifer and Gina, in conjunction with Avid District Director Molly Lester and the EL team, they're going to release a CLRT best practice website for staff on February 1st, so people can access that at any time. Thirdly, for priority statement 2, our last plan is to implement the informal walkthrough form that we piloted last spring. We've got numerous walkthrough forms, Avid, CLRT, peer coaching, but we had prioritized these questions. Our piloted document came in spring of 2018, which had almost 20 questions. It was just a bit unwieldy, and we're in the process of consolidating all those forms for easier use. Finally, our third priority statement for this year is analyzing specific areas that will enhance our relationship building strategies. The first 2 action steps are complete, or they're 3 months away from completion. Brian Booth had presented at a principals meeting, for example, on the Minnesota State Survey to assist principals in delivering it with support when the principals needed it. But our main focus at this time is to survey staff and parents mid-year to gauge how well we're doing. The implementation, the involvement of the strategies and activities. This was the focus of our small and large group planning meetings this month. We developed a draft of an introductory statement and 7 or 8 questions for staff and parents to gauge their knowledge, implementation, and the involvement to overall assist students in the schools. This should be completed by next month. So this will conclude the student climate culture presentation, and I'll entertain any questions at this time. Yes, Michelle.
So, so this is great work. It's very exciting, and so it sounds like there's a variety of focus groups and input and surveys. So would that be something that we can sort of see or watch or measure the growth and change in some of these, you know, just the input?
Absolutely, and that's what we would share then at our strategic planning in May. So, yep, that will be something that will continue from year to year so we can measure that growth.
Great, thanks.
I guess it's more of a comment, so I agree with Michelle. This is really exciting. I think it connects to a lot of the presentations that we've seen from schools this over the last couple of months or meetings this school year. And what I would like us to be thinking about is how we can be really intentional about that really great social emotional learning work and activities and programming we have going along being part of that strategic plan, so that they're showing up and we're making that connection that those social emotional learning activities are contributing to our student success, so that we're drawing that line for all of our staff really clearly, so they understand the importance of continuing to do that work, and that they're seeing how it's contributing to our strategic plan and to our student outcomes in the district.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to transition to Dr. Witherspoon, who will detail the progress of staff climate and culture.
And Kevin, maybe as you come up, just come on up. I'd just like to comment that in doing the behavior committee work alongside of the teachers union and looking at some of the social emotional learning information, Dr. Holly and his work around strategies were noted, and a lot of research was part of the social emotional learning. So we certainly saw that connection as we worked as a team just this week. Thank you.
So priority statement 1 was that 93%, or is, that 93% of all employees will participate in at least one professional development activity regarding cultural awareness, enhancing work climate culture, or work-life balance. We are lucky enough to have Rick Petrie from the university, or from Hamlin School of Law. No, William Mitchell. Mitchell Hamlin. Sorry, School of Law. Don't tell him I said that. He is doing some of our sessions, and we have sessions scheduled for January 16th. So yesterday we actually had 2 sessions. One was during the day, and 75 people attended, and one was at night, and there was approximately 110 people that attended. Lots of input and conversation, so it was good. The focus for those sessions is conversations that bring people together while understanding how our personal values and beliefs impact our own perspectives. And so I was fortunate to be there for both of them, and thought it was a great night. As we look at priority statement number 2, increase the number of new hires of color from 11 to 15%. This increase will be found in examining the number of new hires from June 30th 2018 to June 30th, 2019. And we chose those dates because of when hiring happens thank you. And I just wanted to give a quick update. So from April 18th, thanks, Shelley. From April 18th, 2018 through January 7th is the last time we pulled the data, 2019. The employees, all of the employees that we hired in that time period, 14.6% of them were persons of color. So I have a breakdown, and I don't want to identify too much here, but we had 8 of them were teachers, 2 principals, 8 paraprofessionals, 4 maintenance. We have 5 food service part-time employees. So we are getting closer to our goal as a snapshot anyway. I also just want to note that the district has made gains in hiring people of color for key leadership positions. So our principal positions, director level positions and such. Of the 3 positions that were open and we went through a hiring process, all 3 of them were employees of color. The other piece that I want to update on is some of our advertising and recruitment efforts. Right now, we post frontline frontline positions at Century College, Inver Hills, River Falls, Minnesota Works, St. Paul Library, St. Paul College, Dakota County Technical College, and Neighborhood House, which focuses on diverse candidates. We also use Indeed, Jobs in Minneapolis, City of Cottage Grove website, the Bulletin, La Voz Latina, that again focuses on diverse candidates. It's also it's printed and it's delivered free to every home on St. Paul's West Side, which is the Twin Cities' most established Hispanic community. We also use The Voice, which is also a printed ad distributed in West St. Paul, downtown St. Paul, and South St. Paul. Cottage Grove Area Chamber of Commerce, we're hoping to partner and do an advertisement in there as well that could potentially reach 13,000 people in the area. We continue to work with communications to develop a recruitment campaign utilizing social media. We attended the Washington County Workforce Job Fair, also Cottage Grove Chamber of Commerce Job Fair. We are signed up and scheduled to attend the Minnesota Education Job Fair on April 10th. That's the largest job fair for educators, and at the Convention Center in Minneapolis, and so we'll be there. And then we are also registered to attend the University of Iowa Statewide Educator Fair, and we're hoping to do some recruiting of people who live in Minnesota, might have gone to college in Iowa and want to come back, as well as some paraprofessional and kids club positions too for summer. We are making plans to attend the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee to do a career fair there as well. I think we can move to the third one. So 833 will develop and implement a retention plan for all employees. And there's several action steps there, but I'll go over the progress of what we have so far. So we have a recruitment and retention committee that met January 8th and it has scheduled meetings for Tuesday, February 26th, April 30th, and June 4th. We had a small showing this time, but I like that we partner with our teachers union. Marty was there with us, and we had some great ideas in terms of how we brand and what are some things that we can do to have people understand where South Washington County is and what cities and stuff. So I think that will be helpful. We have established someone to coordinate the affinity groups for staff of color, and look forward to more information about that in the future. I just met today, and I'm really excited with where we're headed with that as well. We will continue looking at, into mentoring programs for staff of color. A goal was to implement a plan for 2019-20 school year, so we're still exploring some of those options. And I think that's it. Oh, exit interviews. So we have an exit interview process in place. I would say it's not consistent. We are going to use a system called Qualtrics that they can implement and analyze some of our exit interview information to allow us to support our staff more so that we can retain more staff. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Well, I think it's very exciting to see the growth in leadership, like you say, of people of color. I mean, was a really big step forward, I think, in our district this year. And if we keep putting forward, learning, growing, asking critical questions, we're getting progress. So it's really awesome. The other thing I wanted to just add on number 1 of employee participation in the PLD, that one of the things we heard a lot from teachers in the schools is how the training is delivered, or when, just the timing or being pulled out of class or those types of things. So that might just be one other little piece of this as it goes forward, is that it's like we're delivering, to me, really exceptional PLD, but how and the timing might be something in this next year that we
Yep, and so we are working on that. I have a meeting scheduled with Brian Booth to look at next year's, what we can put in place now. I'll also say the sessions I talked about are for our frontline professionals mostly, so not in teaching staff. Gotcha. And we have them a variety of times during the day and at night, and on days when there aren't kids, and so there's a variety of us, so we are working. There's more work to do. Yeah. I'd like to, in the future, look at just working, most of those staff only work during student contact days, so I'd like to work some extra days into their contracts to do professional development.
Great, thanks.
I'm happy that you're being intentional in this work, and I think that we need to strengthen our procedures in supporting those persons with everybody. So I'm glad of the work, and I'm glad you're doing a good job. And it's Mitchell Hamlin School of Law.
I know, sorry. I've been there several times too, right?
No more lunch for you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
So with that, thank you to the leadership team who did the presentation tonight and really are leading the efforts around our strategic plan. I would say next steps, the teams will continue to gather data and present that information to the board and our larger stakeholder group in May. And with that, you heard Ashley Ruka, assistant principal at Eastridge High School, talk about before it comes to that large group in May, that we would have a student group that would also review and give feedback prior to that large group in May. So we look forward to hearing more and having an update at the end of the year.
Thank you. Any final questions, comments? All right. Thank you so much for the update. 8.2 is a financial update by our Director of Finance, Dan Pyan.
Good evening, Chair Burnett, members of the school board, student members, and Superintendent Nielsen. I'm here tonight to give you our monthly financial update. When Ron was talking about donations, it did remind me of a story. There was this local charity, and the guy in charge was looking through the records, and he saw something, so he called a citizen who was a prominent lawyer, and he said, I noticed our records show and our research shows that you make about $800,000 a year, and you've never given our charity any money. And the attorney says, well, does your research show that I have a mother who's of failing health and has tremendous medical bills? And he said, oh, no. And he said, does your research show that my brother is a disabled veteran and has a hard time getting along? He said, no, I'm sorry. And he goes, and does your research show that my sister is financially struggling and is a single mother of 5 children? He says, no, I'm sorry. And he goes, does your research show that I have never given them any money, and that's why I won't give you any either?
I'm glad you're feeling okay, because I got concerned. There were only 10 slides that I got, so maybe I didn't get the full board packet.
Well, it's only January. We're just a brief update. Okay. I'm kind of on a timeline too, I think. So tonight we'll just give you the update that we usually give in January. It's the financial time of year when we just got the audit done, and we start working on the next year's budget as they're working right now on staffing, which is the most important thing. We will put requests out for operating capital to see what we will put into that budget and start working on the revenues. Our revenues are a little shaky. I mean, we won't really know what they're going to be until the legislature's done, but we have some pretty good ideas. But it's a chance to look and see where we were a year ago, where we're going, and what we're looking at right now. So in the PowerPoint, we will refer back to a couple of the documents that were attached to the agenda, specifically the enrollment one when we get to the enrollment issue, and then as we look at the fund balances. Oops, wrong one. So a year ago, where were we? It seems longer ago, but it was November 17 when we had a very important election, and we'll talk about that a couple times because it was so important. And that's where it was passed that we would renew $771 per pupil in operating referendum, and then an additional $375 per pupil in operating referendum. So as we look back a year ago, we had just found this out, and we really can't use this money for another year, so we had to look to be in a year in which we had to survive through the year. We also passed a capital projects levy for $2 million a year, which is very important. The 17 audit had just been completed, and if you look on your attachment, at the end of 17, we had a fund balance of about $7.4 million total fund balance at about 3.38%. Unassigned fund balance about 1.77. So we kind of knew that we're still going to be under our board goal, but we're just trying to survive. Oops, wrong way. So we looked, a year later after that, where are we right now? Well, we're still looking. The reason I talk about the election results again is because the importance of the operating referendum, and also the fact that it didn't hit this year yet. I mean, in the 17-18 year, and that's the audit we just finished. That audit was completed. We came in with a fund balance about $8.4 million, which is about $1 million more than. Well, it's about $1 million more than we had last year, and it's actually about $1.5 million more than we actually expected. We'll talk about those results in a second. That leaves us at about 3.73, still below our 5%, but of course we did not get that referendum money yet. And we also didn't get that capital projects money yet. The unassigned fund balance is about 1.7. So, as I talked, we said those revenues do not start until 18-19. So right now we're in the 18-19 school year. We just finished the 17-18 audit. And as we looked at that audit, you got a pretty good presentation and you approved the adoption of the audit. But just in general terms, as we look at what happened, our revenues came in about 0.8% above budget. So our goal on our budgets is to stay within 1% either way. It's always nice to be on the upside. So that was a positive, and then our expenses came in at about 0.4% under budget, which was a positive there, which had a shift in our dollars of about $1.5 million. So we end up about $3 million more than we expected, and it wasn't that long ago when I was sitting here telling you, things go the way we think they will at the end of 18, we'll have about $5.3 million, and we have about $5.3 million, now we have $8.3 million. So we were pretty happy about that, but now we have to keep looking forward, and it's not always the best. Where are we going? Well, in 18-19, we know that we get the new revenues finally from the referendums, and so our revenues are increasing about $10 million. $7.5 million of that money is coming from the new $375 per pupil unit that was approved. If we think back to 15 when we went out, and 14 we actually told you, we're going to need $900 more per pupil to get to our fund balance goals at some point in time, and the board had decided to do $525 the first, and then 2 years later come back for $375. Well, the strategy worked, and the money came in. There's a net $500,000 extra from capital projects levy, and there's about $2.5 million more from the addition to the formula and a slight increase in enrollment, although now we're finding out that it's decreasing slightly, and we'll talk about that in a second. Of course, we have increasing expenses of about $9.6 million from inflation, cost of living, and staffing. And in 19, if you look on on the mid-year projection, we're projecting about 3.7% fund balance of about $8.8 million, which is about a $400,000 increase from last year. It may come in better. There's a couple factors that we're looking at that could change that, and of course, being conservative, we're always, expecting the worst. As we look at our enrollment, if you look at the handout with the enrollment sheet, and this is something that we work on every month to keep projecting enrollment. The one thing we're trying to do is project what the state will say our enrollment is for the end of the year, because we don't pick a date and say that's our enrollment. They actually average it out every day. It's called average daily membership. And it's not so much if the kids are in school or not, if they're enrolled or not. But we had projected about 18,783 students, and we don't have that many right now. We don't believe we do. There's a couple factors that may change that, but we are coming in under, and it's disappointing. Over the last 10 years, we have an average increase of 1.4% in enrollment. So if you average out the increase, we have budget for about a 1% increase, and we're actually right now looking at maybe a little decrease in our enrollment. A couple of factors that could change that would be the number of kids that we have in early childhood special education preschool, which count as regular ADMs. That number, we don't always exactly know what it's going to end up at. The number of kids that are in PSEO that do not enroll in our district or do get counted for classes in our district, and that's the number that we don't always have a real good handle on until the end of the year. So I always kind of project more there, which reduces our child count. So right now, looking at the reason that our fund balance isn't showing a huge increase is because I'm projecting a decrease in revenue of about $2.5 million. So enrollment's always important because, as you know, our largest portion of our revenue comes from state aid, and state aid is calculated by multiplying enrollment by the state formula. So as you look at 1920, what are we looking at for projections? Right now, I see an increase in revenue of about $4.5 million. I'm assuming a 2% increase from the state in our formula. They will establish what the formula will be for the next 2 years in this session. As you remember from our legislative priority meetings, that we are asking as a district, and most every educational organization is asking for a 3% each year, and to maybe tie it to inflation. Time will tell on those things. Federal revenue is a little uncertain right now. It's not so much because of the shutdown, but it's because it's a nastier word called sequestering, where they've been reducing the amount of federal aid they're giving out by set amounts. And we're not seeing a big increase for us in the federal side. And then we see enrollment increasing a little bit. If you look at the enrollment projections, if we end up at 18,458 kids in 1819, we're projecting about 18,665 kids in 1920. And of course, we have to assume increasing expenses from inflation, COLA, and staffing. So at this point in 2020, we're projecting a fund balance of about $9.4 million at about almost 4% total. So what can change these projections? I show you this slide every year for the last 5 years, so you should probably be able to recite it. But what will change at the beginning of fund balance at the end of the 18-19 audit? Staffing, where the kids are coming in and not coming in. Based on what we're looking at for numbers, I don't, in total numbers, I don't see where we'd have to have any staff, but that's me. Of course, the principals and the superintendents have a different idea, but it really depends on where the kids come in and where the bubbles are. Of course, enrollment, the more kids, the more money. Contract settlements, we're going to go through negotiations with some large labor groups. They always sway the model. Services, utility supply costs. Legislative actions, 1% on the formula equals $1.2 million for us, so any time that we can get above the 2% assumption, it's going to help our model. And of course, then expenses we don't always know about, unfunded mandates like special education, TRA and PERA, and then any other revenue sources we come across. So I will open that up for any questions. Otherwise, I thank you for your time.
Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. 9.0 are discussion items, and we don't have any this evening. 10.0 are action items. 10.1 is math resource grades 3 through 5, and our Director of Teaching and Learning Services, Kelly Jansen, will join us.
Good evening again. I don't have a joke, nor will I try to keep up with Dan. He's a tough act to follow. I'm here this evening to provide an update on the math curriculum work and ask for approval to purchase a new core district math resource for teaching the standards and benchmarks to our students in grades 3, 4, and 5. As you are aware, over the past 2 years, district staff and administrators have worked through the process of unpacking math standards, creating the SBI progress report, creating success criteria, reviewing assessments, and evaluating resources. Last year, a committee of teachers, administrators, and district staff recommended the purchase of Bridges Math in grades K through 2. This fall, we continued the focus on elementary math resources with careful consideration given to resources that would best meet the needs of our students and teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5. The goal was to provide each teacher with a consistent core resource so that any existing teacher, any new teacher, or any teacher that moved within our district to a new grade level would have the necessary resources and materials to teach the expected math lessons. So this fall, the math leadership team, which includes teachers, principals, district office staff, and TLS staff, convened with the charge of determining is Bridges the right fit to move forward. Knowing our timeline was short, we focused in on Bridges, also understanding that that group had done a lot of work as a K-5 group, reviewing a lot of other resources the previous spring. And so the following rationale has led me to make this recommendation to you tonight. Bridges aligns and will be able to support the shared portion or the whole group of our math expectations and our math workshop model. In addition, Bridges also brings math talk and math play in the elementary school. If you go into a school right now in our K2 and then we visited 3, 4, and 5, it's amazing to see the joy on kids' face during math, which oftentimes you don't see in those upper levels when that content gets a little bit harder. In addition, Bridges also aligns with some of the work and the professional development that's been done in this district. Coming into this district, it's been awesome to see how far ahead our teachers are in terms of their philosophy about teaching math and getting kids to understand deeper concepts versus that rote memorization that many of us remember from when we were in school. So kudos to the staff and the administration for all the work that's been done. Districts that adopt Bridges do that because they have this mindset. I also received a lot of input from teachers and administrators that there was a very strong need for a consistent core resource. We also heard positive input and feedback from teachers, district leaders, and other directors regarding Bridges. This included an additional site visit this year. Last week we went to Wayzata, and they are in their 3rd year of Bridges implementation, so one of the earlier adopters. And previously, 2 other sites had been visited by this group last year for Bridges as well. The cost of Bridges allows us to do this purchase in 1 year for grades 3, 4, and 5. Curriculum is expensive. There's a lot of research and time that goes into the development, and so the cost of Bridges does allow us to purchase this for grades 3, 4, and 5. And truly positive comments and student data and anecdotal student happiness around math from people who have implemented Bridges. There are many districts, I wish I should have brought that, many districts throughout Minnesota that have adopted it, and other large districts currently that are even piloting it. I think you're going to hear a lot more about Bridges in the coming years as far as a math resource. So with input from the District Math Leadership Committee, who consulted and relied heavily on input and feedback from other 3, 4, and 5 teachers, District directors, principals, and teaching and learning staff members, I am asking for the approval to purchase the math resource at an approximate cost of $500,000, with another $100,000 to be used for professional development. These dollars are already allocated in the TLS budget, so this would not go above and beyond the allocations for the TLS budget, the projected TLS budget. I would entertain any questions.
All right, how about we'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the recommendation to purchase the Bridges program.
Second.
Okay. All right, so moved by Pat and second by Katie. All right, questions, comments?
So one quick question. I think at least a couple of the listening sessions that I went to at the elementary level, there were a lot of comments that came forward about our implementation. So I'm happy to see that we have dollars provided, but have we thought through the information from the teachers that have been through this and how that implementation will go a little bit smoother? Because I think what I heard was the fact that, they have all their other curriculum too, and now they're trying to learn this. So have we thought through how we're going to support the teachers as we implement this?
Yeah, if you think about it, elementary teachers are teaching 5 or even 6 different subjects. And so an implementation is difficult and hard, no matter how great of a teacher you are. So it's a new resource that it takes time to implement. So a couple of things I think are going to help with that is our early recommendation. So we'll be planning for all of that throughout the spring with teacher leaders and listening to, if we could have done things different, K2, what would you have liked to have seen? So we'll be planning throughout the spring for that. We will also be providing professional development much earlier than we were able to last year, so that will help. We also have created kind of a 3-year phase-in implementation. Change takes time, and new resources take time, so we want to make teachers feel like they have permission to not be perfect in that first year of implementation. And so here are our expectations for year 1, and here's a little bit more for year 2, and then here's a little bit more for year 3, because teachers want to do things right. They are very, they want to be really good at what they do, and they want to do what's right for kids. And so many of them will try to do everything, and that becomes overwhelming. So we want to make sure they feel like they have permission and a safe space to be learning along with their students in the first year. So I'm hopeful with this early adoption and having those conversations throughout the spring, and then the maps that we put in place will ease some of those fears.
Yeah, and I think the only other comment I would make too then is the training and the professional development, but then it's the change management too. Because I think what I heard too are, some folks accept change easier than other folks too. So I think we have to be, at least identify that and how we can bring people along so that they feel good about the decision if they weren't in the room to help bring this recommendation forward.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 10.2 is the approval of wages and benefits for maintenance employees, and our Director of Human Resources, Kevin Witherspoon, will talk to us about this.
Good evening. I'm here tonight seeking approval of wages and benefits for maintenance employees. Negotiations towards a new collective bargaining agreement between the South Washington County Schools and the Maintenance Employees International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 70, have resulted in a 2-year agreement to be effective July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2020. Members of the bargaining unit approved the tentative agreement October 11th, 2018, and the economic costings are as follows. For wages, 2.25% retroactive to July 1st for the first year, and a 2% increase for the second year. District contributions for health insurance, as of January 1st, 2019, they'll decrease by 6%. The cost to the district will decrease by 6%. And then January 1st, 2020, they'll increase by 6%. VEBA contributions have stayed the same. TSA match will remain at $2,500 annually, and then no other changes to any other benefits, at least costing model benefits. Any questions?
All right, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Sharon, second by Katie. Any questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 11.0, reports and comments. 11.1 is our superintendent's report.
Thank you. Kelly has shared much of this evening, but just an update. Our teaching and learning department is at the core of our work, and under Kelly Jansen's leadership, we are continuing our conversations around ATPPS and the implementation of an instructional coaching model. At the secondary level, we are continuing to focus on standards-based instruction, while the elementary has a stronger focus on math. This includes work around the unpacked standards, success criteria, and the resources needed to teach. And then you also heard this evening that we continue to focus on Seesaw and Schoology in our area of teaching and learning. As we hit the month of February, we are looking ahead and planning for the 2019-2020 school year. And it's amazing how quickly that comes and how early we have to start planning. Over the winter break, Trish Torito, Director of Student Information, did the rollover of numbers, so we can now take a look at the numbers K through 12 in terms of the school placement and what our numbers, our preliminary numbers look like in our schools. With that enrollment, on February 19th, we will welcome our kindergarten students in for kindergarten registration. So that is coming up on the 19th. And so that process of student enrollment and staffing our schools is beginning, and it really runs parallel. So the numbers of students we have and the staff. And so we will continue to work on that over the next couple of months and until we get up until the teacher placement time closer in April. And finally, before I leave the mic tonight, first of all, I love kids. I think they're funny and they're really smart. So smart sometimes I walked into a classroom today, and I was out in the schools a lot, which means I'm kind of jazzed today because I like being out in the classrooms. A cute little friend, I walked in, and as Kelly talked about the number corners and the workstations that our kids are part of my walkthrough today was taking a look at how is that looking in our classrooms. And so I walked into the classroom, and I knew one of the students, and I called her by name and kind of walked over to her, and this cute little friend in the back shouts out, "Hey, is that your grandma?" And so not only smart, but wise. He noticed I was old and experienced. And so I have to tell you, that just warms my heart.
And caring.
Yes. I will say that no one in the back row calls me grandma yet, thankfully. But kids are so darn cute. I just have to tell you, there's just such an energy in our schools. And just being out today, I was in 3 different schools, and just walking through our schools and walking through our classrooms. And as Kelly presented the math tonight, I'm very proud. While hard work implementing new curriculum and new resources, I think when we talk specifically and when I'm in classrooms with the building principals, there are really powerful things to say about what's happening with students. And so while it's tough work for teachers sometimes, our students, I think they're clearly seeing the benefits with our kids and the conversations they're having around math. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. 11.2 are the student board reports, and we'll start with Lindsay tonight.
Okay. So I talked about this last week, but or last month, with our Wolfpack Welcome, and we had a really good turnout for that, and everyone really liked it. It was really good. It was really spirited. We have registration for 9th through 11th grade due tomorrow, and then we've just recently started a competition for our school values, which is integrity, commitment, and compassion, or ICC. So kids are recognized for showing those values, and they get an ICCU ticket, which they put their name on and everything, and then they turn it into their advisory teacher, and then the class, the advisory class with the most tickets wins whenever the end date is. I'm not really sure. They didn't tell me an end date. We also started a student tutoring program during our ACE time, which is 30 minutes a day in each period, in each hour after class, to work on homework for that class or any other work that needs to be completed. And so students who volunteered to help do that get passes, and then they get assigned a room to go to, and they can help younger classmen or other students who need that help, and I'm a part of that, and it was super great. I got to go into a biology classroom, and I love biology, and I got to work with freshmen and sophomores on their work, and it was super cool. And then the one-act play for Park is happening at Woodbury High School tomorrow. And then looking forward, we have the Suburban East Conference Music Festival on February 4th at White Bear Lake, and that's run all day. And then also, starting February 4th, we have our annual Snow Week. This year's theme is Winter Wonderland, and that runs through February 4th through the 9th. And then we have a semi-formal dance on February 9th to follow that up.
Cool. Thank you. Anna.
Hi. So we're doing a lot of the same stuff you guys are. We're doing registration, which is really cool because we have a bunch of new courses that are possibly running this year, or next year, I guess. But there's lots of new things like rap is poetry and all sorts of fun stuff that can be really interesting and help make the learning process more fun. And we're doing this new thing called Super Saturday. It's on January 26th. It's for parents and students of 10th and 11th graders for them to learn about post-secondary options and just like different registration things. And I think it'll really help people understand what they can do with their lives as opposed to just trying to like blindly guess. And then we have a new cultural liaison, Olivia Aston. We participated in the Tri-M music recital, or we're going to, or no, we did. I don't know what date it is. On January 17th. Oh, that we did it today. Cool.
Good job.
Thank you. Our winter sports are continuing to compete, and our student council is currently doing a Pennies for Patients drive. And this year, our student council has done a lot more of like cultural outreach stuff where we tried to get more, like we did a toiletries drive earlier this year, and we just tried to help the community more. And it's been really cool because we've been able to make it into a competition and see a lot more like people getting into it, and we've raised almost $200 already, and it's been a week for Pennies for Patients, which is a lot for us. And so I think that's been really cool.
Very nice. Thank you both. Thank you. 12.0 are our future meeting dates. We have regular meetings on February 7th and February 21st. And with that, unless we have any additional information, happy birthday to Julie next week, and we are adjourned.